So I'm actually really excited because I never get to do in-person podcasts with people. So that's why I drove all the way over here today. Yeah, because the energy is different when you have someone right next to you.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Hayya Lee McDonald, and I'm here with Karen Daly. She is what's your title at EKKO?
So I'm the branch manager for the Ashburn office, right? But I'm also an attorney, one of the attorneys with Leggett, Simon, Free Myers and Lyon. That's the law firm that owns EKKO. And last year I made partners.
Oh,
that's really exciting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So see, I would never have gotten that title entirely correct. But what I can tell you is Karen, when I'm doing deals in Virginia, Karen is the person I'm coming to. I don't care where it is in Virginia. And that's because you don't mess with Karen. um, yeah, and all of our transactions tend to be hairy. So that's also one of the reasons that I'm so happy that Jamie actually introduced us to each other and that I met you, because it's really rare to find a title attorney, a title agency that is actually a problem solver.
Right.
There's an ad, I think it's like a Geico ad. There's a security officer at the bank and he says, "I'm just a problem pointer outer," right?
Yeah. Don't like that. We like to solve the problems because, the seller wants to sell, the buyer wants to buy. There's goals everybody has, and we want to make sure that they're able to meet those goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, as a company too, you're running a business, you have to make profit. So it's in everybody's best interest that the transaction closes. Speaking of transactions, we always bring the hairy ones to you. It might start out simple, but it never ends up that way.
It's true. And some of it too might be because of who the sellers are, and so you can't always control that. But I think, a lot of times what we need to start looking future wise is a lot of the current owners are going to be aging, right? So you're going to start dealing with a lot of folks who are either approaching the end of their life or they died. And so you have heirs that are selling the real property. And it's becoming also an area that's ripe for fraud.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot more strict guidelines when you've got an owner who's died and there's no will.
And that's a lot of what we deal with. We specifically work on probate or pre-probate situations. And I know it sounds a little macabre, maybe.
Dismal.
Yes, we work with dead people. Not them directly, but their heirs, right? And I remember you asked me one time, "Do you just scour the obituaries or whatever?" No, we don't scour the obituaries. But when we bring challenges or transactions that end up being challenges to EKKO, it's usually because there's an heir involved. There's a lot of legal paperwork and stages that have to happen in order for us to get this thing to closing. And so you could have very well said to us at the very beginning of our relationship, "Hey, no, we don't want to do this." So what is it that I guess made you say yes to the type of deals that we brought or we bring?
You always learn something, right? It's also, I see it as you're helping the heirs, right? Deal with some property that is valuable and it could help them with wherever they are in life. It's better for someone to come in and buy the property as opposed to going to a foreclosure sale, which a lot of times these properties are in that foreclosure status because the owner has died. The heirs are like, we can't afford the mortgage, or we don't know what to do, or maybe the lender is not talking to them. Lenders, they have their own red tape when it comes to, an owner who's died. So it's a way of helping people achieve a good outcome, from a sad situation.
Right, definitely. So since we're talking about us first coming to you to work on our deals, who is your ideal client? Who do you like to work with as a title company and title attorney?
I mean, I'll generally try to work with everybody. I like it though. What I really appreciate and what helps us with our job is when you've got either I mean, both the seller and the buyer being responsive, being organized. And when we say, hey, this document is needed, going and getting that document. Or when we're reaching out either by email or phone call, you know, they're responding back. I appreciate working with you because you'll call up even before you've got the contract and go, okay, here's the situation we have. How can we make sure we have all of our ducks in a row? So that way, you know, the process, the buying and the selling process can go smoothly. And that makes a huge difference, I think. Sometimes people approach it sort of playing from, hey, let's just wing it. And with real estate these days, you can't wing it, especially if you're dealing with an estate, right? It's not a situation that you can just say, okay, we signed a contract, you know, that's it. It's not it. You know, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, you can have a contract and the deal will die.
Yes.
If you don't do everything correctly.
Yes. Yeah. Someone decides that they're going to ghost you or not cooperate, or you've got a third party that you have no control over and like a lender, and trying to get them, you know, reeled in and say, okay, this is the direction we're going, you know, come along with us because we're going to make sure you get paid. Sometimes that can be challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing for me too, it's when I interview title companies, if I'm going to be in a different state or whatever, it's, and people say, well, you interview the title company? And I keep, well, yeah, if I'm going to be working with them, and I'd expect them to be interviewing me too.
Right.
I think part of what I'm looking for is to hear that there's mutual respect for what each of us does, because I think you can't really have a fruitful relationship if somebody does not respect the other party.
Right. Yeah. Yes. We find that deal with that a lot, unfortunately. So it helps knowing that you've got a true team player, that they're not going to just automatically throw you under the bus, but instead, you know, you hear a piece of information and then you're checking back. Okay, let me call, let me reach out, find out what's going on instead of a knee-jerk reaction, which I see quite a lot of, oh yeah, the title company, you know, messed up. And it wasn't the title company. So
you dropped the ball somewhere.
It could be any number of people who have dropped the ball or who are not responding. But, you know, to understand and appreciate everybody's role, that is certainly appreciated by us, as I know it is you, because we all work hard, right? And we have plenty of other stresses in our life. We don't need to have people throwing others under the bus.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's something that you and I talk about too, because clearly we're both women, right?
Yes.
There are things we're dealing with in our lives outside of work as well. And I don't know what, if anything, you have to say about this, but as a woman in this business, you know, what are some of the challenges you see and what do you think are some of your advantages?
That's actually a good question. So obviously work life, especially if you're a mother, you have, you know, children, depending on age, you know, what activities they're involved with.
You might not care a whole lot about everybody else's problem. You got your own stuff.
As women, I think to one of your other questions, you know, what's an advantage as women? You know, we're more empathetic. You know, so if someone comes to us with a problem, we're okay. How listening and how can we help? Right. So I think that's a benefit as being a female. I guess boss,
right?
A female in the workplace is helpful. But drawing the line and figuring out, okay, how can I do a good work-life balance, right? When I initially started out, I was home like all the time, and I'm learning to dial that back. You know, if I'm on vacation, unless it's truly an emergency, I'm trying to, you know, save that time and go, I'm here with my kids. Let me focus on that.
Right.
You know, because that time, you're never going to get that back.
That's the biggest thing, I think. You know, in this real estate space, there's a lot of money to be made, but I think time is more valuable than money because, like you said, you just don't get it back.
Right.
And as women, our bodies will tell us that you've done a whole lot too much.
And now the break.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed I've started doing is being intentional about my words. Whereas, you know, you said we're empathetic and want to help. I might have said in the past, oh, call me anytime.
Sure.
I'm very intentional about that. Now, no, I'm not telling you to call me anytime, right? We have to set some boundaries. And I think that's really important too. Whether you're working within a company or you're starting a business or whatever it is.
Right.
You need boundaries because you're just going to flame out.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
And I think sometimes that's hard as business owners to appreciate because you are, while it's not a driving force, it is a driving force with the income and the money that's earned. You want to make sure that you've got business coming in because you have bills to pay, family to feed, family to take care of, things you want to do, right? So it's trying to find, okay, is this something I can take right now, or can it wait till Monday? Is that okay? And that's always a learning experience. Right?
Absolutely. So let's dive back into some of the deals we've worked on. There have been quite a few, and which one do you want to talk about? Because all of them have been hairy.
They've all had their unique circumstances.
Yeah.
There have been commonalities. And a lot of them have dealt with people who have died, and flipping a house to make it be productive as opposed to just sitting there and not earning money. So I think probably one of the craziest stories, though, and I'm never going to forget this, is how many heirs. One of the deals we did, I think I drew that family tree like a dozen times. It was so many heirs.
Yeah. I think that might have been the second one.
Might have been, yeah, where it was, she had died and then she had siblings and then
I think for like half siblings.
Yes, there were half siblings and then some of the siblings died and then going down the family tree, and I think we had to go up to the parents and then out. So it's definitely, I think, one of the stories I tell about with, how far down do you go in Virginia to find an heir?
Right.
We went really far.
Really deep.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know this one. I think I mentioned this to you last year, whenever it was. We worked on one. We 35 heirs on one side.
Yes.
Heirs on the other side. I mean, but sometimes, and actually those are the kinds of deals I really like because I thrive. I really love research. I mean, it might not be so much fun for you.
Well, I like it because you do the research and you come and you say, okay, Karen, here's what it is. Here's all my documentation and backs up my research. So that's me.
Right. But I mean, I love those because my mind, I really do love problem solving. And in the real estate investing space, first of all, it's very male dominated. If they've got to see the money quickly, from the start. And with these, I can see the money, but the path getting there is going to be very twisted and turny and all.
Someone bumpy.
Right. Bumpy.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the payoff in the end of these transactions, a lot of times they're much higher than the average transaction. So what do you get out of an experience like that?
The research is definitely, because I am a nerd too in research, and it's the rabbit trails are always interesting, and so that's always good. Talking with the heirs, helping them through that and figure out, okay, here's the path forward. Because sometimes they're nervous or they're scared or they're uncertain because they've never faced this before, right? And sometimes I have to do that reality check of they're not in this business like I am, right? So I have to do that mental check, in talking and explaining things to them. It's expanded my horizons. Also I think it helps give a perspective, just personally.
Yeah.
Right. So if something is happening or, it's a bad experience, it helps me to go, you know what? They did it, so I can do it.
Yeah.
So there's that, I think, is also good with working in this space, is because it does give you that broader perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, aside from the research that I love, what it always brings up in me, because when you're dealing with so many heirs and you have to dig so deep, you inevitably run into someone who just wants all the money for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to kind of help them stay in their lane.
Yeah.
And understand that everybody else is entitled to this as well.
Yes.
So when I do these kinds of projects, what comes up for me, it's like this rooting for the underdog too. I always feel like, the feeling of, okay, somebody's trying to take advantage of somebody now and I've got to step in. And so that comes up quite often for me. But, aside from the research, I do really love the fact that I can produce a result for people who didn't think there would be.
Right.
It's positive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Something they didn't even expect. They weren't this realm or this, this option of, hey, there's actually some money here, it's in a way that it's surprising, but also then it helps them because maybe there's financial, issues that they're having, and this is a way for them to maneuver through that.
Right. I remember one deal we worked on was probably last year. But this was the one, I think it was in Suffolk or Norfolk. But at the beginning, one of the errors was she really wanted to hold on to this house, and it was in poor shape, really poor shape. The other heir who had legal control wanted to sell it. We had a contract. And the heir that I talked with this heir who wanted to hold on to it, and she wanted to hold on to it because she saw that it's their only path to owning a home. And she was very combative when we started the conversation, but I think having someone hear her was really important because, she came down. But by the time we were done with this transaction, and she walked away, I don't know, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. She was really smiling and really happy and grateful because she said, well, I was trying to save this house. I didn't know how I would do it. And there were only 2 weeks left, I think, to the foreclosure. And she didn't know how she was going to save this house. She didn't have the money. Right now, she's walking away with tens of thousands of dollars. And she literally breathed a sigh of relief and was smiling. She said, now I can actually save money. I can pay my bills. I can actually look at buying a house that I want.
Yes.
Instead of dealing with one that's I've got to figure out how to live in this property. It's unsafe.
Right. Figure out, live, pay, probably pay whatever was due and owing, and then probably also fix up and repair it. So she ended up being in a better position, but it's hard to see that at the outside.
Right. And I think that's the importance too, the work that I do and the work that you do, because, and I'm going to toot our horns for us because I would say the majority of title companies don't operate the way you do. We've worked with a lot over the years since 2014. We've worked with a lot of title companies. They don't operate the way you do. And I will venture to say that the way we operate, because when I train my team, it's to talk to people with empathy, firmness, and expertise, but with empathy. And I don't think there are a lot of people in our space, the real estate investing space, who do that. And I think because of that, when people have situations like the one we're just talking about, the trust is really important. And if you give them the empathy and you listen, you have a trust that's built, that's strong,
Right.
that isn't going to fall apart by the end of the transaction. If you get to the end of the transaction.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would really say that that's one of the highlights for me of working with you, because you're doing the work that needs to be done, the technical work, but you're also infusing the human aspect,
Right.
Right. Is.
I think what I like working about with you, not only with the human aspect, but because too, you don't give up, right? So if a problem or a challenge arises, and I think we didn't work on it. I think it was someone I referred to you, but I remember there were just a lot of little hoops that I had to jump through. And I know the owner, or the heir was really getting, discouraged. And why should I even go? Maybe I should just, give up and walk away. And you're like, no, but you're going to figure this out. And you did. And it helped both her and her other sibling out. And they were very appreciative that it went through, and they ended up probably with more money than if they had just done what was originally presented to them. So you ended up helping them get more money in their pocket. And I think they were super appreciative of that.
Yeah. And, I have to thank you for that referral too. It's this whole thing of like seeing people being taken advantage of, because when you told me this person showed up at their door and had them to sign away their rights, for $2,000, I'm like, what in the world? No, that is not how we do things.
Real estate is very valuable. It's more valuable than
I don't care if it's like a patch of grass over here.
Right.
No. So I think honesty is really important in the business. And we're here doing this podcast, and I haven't done that with other title attorneys that I've worked with in the past, but I think there's a relationship here that's built on trust. We've done enough together that, we can have this conversation now, but I really appreciate that. So, let's backtrack a little bit. What are some of the common mistakes that you see new investors or other investors make?
That's so there's being solely focused on the money, right? So yes, there's a lot of money to be made in the real estate world, but there's also a lot of opportunities where you can make a mistake, and it can have significant repercussions. And so sometimes getting involved before they're properly trained, there's something to be said for being hungry. We're all hungry, right? And that's obviously what helps us become successful, but also knowing too, hey, I need to make sure that I attend classes and I'm educating myself. One of the things I appreciate about you is you'll call and you'll say, okay, here's what we got. And you've learned through the transactions that we've done that there's certain types of documentation for a certain type of transaction, and you've incorporated that into your process. And a lot of times there are folks who don't even have a process. It's just, hey, I'm going to research. This property looks good. Let's put a contract together. Here you go. Now let's close. And then if you're operating with like a tight timeline because there's a foreclosure, you've got to have all of the ducks in a row. You've got to have the appropriate authorization signed. If someone has died and there's no will, then you got to track down. Now they want disinterested affidavits, to say, I knew who the previous owner was that died, and I know these are the heirs. So there's a lot of little steps that can trip up people and can cause a deal to fall apart, or, just not really communicating well. That I think is huge, is the communication. Because if they don't respond to the questions timely, that can really slow things down. And if you're under the gun to get it sold, you got to be communicating constantly.
Yeah, there's a lot in that with what you've shared too. And for me, why we've incorporated everything that we've learned from you, other title attorneys we've worked with, is because, again, with the human aspect too, if you have to keep going back to someone and asking them for this, that, and the other, and it's already a scary process at the beginning, traumatic, you're traumatizing them more.
Yes.
Right? And I think your chances are higher that they're going to back out and ghost you when they're now feeling more pressure. So I think it's really important, as you say, to know what you need ahead of time so that you can make it a smooth process for everybody.
Yeah. You can get the documents signed early on that you need. So like you said, you can tweak the language to make sure it has all the appropriate people named who need the authorization, find out who are your primary points of contact. That's all very helpful because, again, if you're operating under the gun and you've got a foreclosure sale in 2 weeks, there's a lot more, and that makes it so much easier on our end. Because we're getting the title work and going, okay, so we know that we need X, Y, and Z, and we can adjust and plan accordingly.
Right. And I think do your homework. So when we train our transaction coordinators, for example, we say, yes, we're giving the file to the title company, but let's give them as much as we possibly can, because our file is not the only file they're working on. So let's give them everything they need so we can make their job easier, and that increases your chance of getting to the finish line successfully.
And that's always key, I think, understanding that, that there's other work that the title company is handling. And so to give as clean of a package as possible is extremely helpful.
Yeah. I think also one of the things that not even just new investors need to keep in mind, but anybody who's been in this business for a while, relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
So, when I first was introduced to you, it was because of a relationship with someone that I had from years back in the investing space. And we had a conversation. I was, one, impressed because you took my call. I think it was like after hours. But also a relationship when you treat people with respect, and also you are a nice person. I don't think you can put too much emphasis on being a nice person, because no one wants to work with a jerk. Right.
That's true. Yes.
So, and we have encountered jerks in our transactions, but the conversation that we had, I remember that conversation is it's like a blip of a mention in it. You said, oh, you can use maybe an affidavit. And that I went and researched that. And so, well, that's one thing. You got to keep your mind open to avenues.
That's true. Yeah.
Because we were having a good conversation and rapport with each other, you were comfortable enough to share information with me. And then the relationship blossomed from there.
Right.
But I think it's important that an investor remembers the relationship, because if you screw up, you can find another title company. But if you do that with every title company,
right,
then where does that leave you? Right.
Right. Yes. Relationships, because too, hey, if a mistake happens, and we're all human and we're going to make mistakes, but fixing the mistake, knowing that they're going to fix it, or that they've got your back, right? Not all transactions are smooth. That's the goal and you want it, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. It's more so the case when you're dealing with, with someone who has died and you're dealing with the heirs. You have lots of different personalities that you're dealing with, and some are easier than others. But again, just understand, okay, how do I talk to this person? Right. So what will resonate with them? And everybody is different. And so, being able to figure that out is key.
So continuing on in this realm of, investors working with title companies, when should they bring them into the conversation? We talked a little bit about having things lined up, but when is really the right time if they're working on a transaction or thinking about working on a transaction?
So if they've identified a property and they've done some preliminary investigation and conversations with the owners, and there seems to be, yes, a willingness, we do want to sell, and you've got a good conversation going, then to reach out to the title company and say, okay, here's a property I'm looking at buying. This is the background. What information can I get for you? And alternatively, if you know that maybe, hey, there might be some judgment liens or some things like that, or foreclosure, is there a way to do a title search to see what is against the property right now, so we know what we're dealing with? Sometimes judgment liens are easy to figure out and get resolved, and then other times, they're not. But it's helpful to know, because then that helps know the price that you're discussing to buy the property. Is it sufficient? Is it enough to cover payment of the liens that are against the property, as well as whatever else? Sometimes you've got delinquent taxes. Sometimes you've got, a property owner who's, not done so well, and there's like credit card judgments, or, financing, people have gotten, finance, have taken out loans and they
Didn't tell anybody.
Right. They didn't tell anyone. They stopped paying. They got sued. Now there's a lien against the property. I had one lady reach out earlier this week, and she said, oh yeah, by the way, it's a family matter. She said, oh, by the way, there's this judgment, I said, well, I mean, wow, that's a pretty amazing judgment, but it's barred.
Amazing on the good one.
Right, by the statute of limitations. So it's not, it's not something that can be enforced, because it's so understanding what you've got, what the picture of the property looks like. I'd say preliminarily, like when you're having those conversations and it looks like it's going well, reach out to the title company and say, okay, here's what we got. What can we do to make sure that we've got, everything good to go? Once the contract is signed, then we can. And realistically, what's a good closing time? Right. A lot of times people, and I'm not saying that it can't be done, because it can be, but it's just like, think of a kettle pot where you've got water and it's, very tight pressure. So the shorter your time frame, the more pressurized it's going to feel. So understanding, okay, what does the property look like as far as, the title, and getting, if there's issues that need to get resolved, how much time do we need to allow? Then you can make sure that when you have your contract signed by the sellers, you've allowed for that time, instead of going back, okay, we have to delay it. We have to push it back, because that will rub people the wrong way.
Everybody the wrong way. And there are a lot of stakeholders in a transaction. And I hope you guys are listening, you investors too, because there are a lot, when there's a ton of information on YouTube about how to do wholesaling. A lot of people teach, oh, just go call people and put stuff on their contract. Don't worry researching anything. And I'm going,
but you should.
You should.
Yes.
I mean, I personally think that's for people who really don't understand the value of time. Because if you understood the value of time, you're going to do all this work, not research anything, get to the end, and then all the work was wasted, because now you've got a lien that's too huge for you to close.
Right. Or you didn't find an heir that needs to sign up the property. I think one of the more challenging ones we had, the guy was, I didn't even know about this, merchant marines.
Oh,
right.
Oh, yeah.
And he was on a ship somewhere.
I don't know where.
So So trying to coordinate his signing,
Problem solving.
yes, yes. But again, like that, again, that's having those conversations with the heirs and understanding, okay, when someone dies and there's no will, this is how the property passes, right? So Virginia has a statute. I was looking at it yesterday on another transaction, but understanding, okay, these are the people who could be the heirs and here's how we have to do the analysis. You want to do that up front rather than on the back. Right. Because everybody has to sign up on the contract.
Speaking of which, remember that deal we did last year with the person who tried to sell the house who didn't have any legal right to it and tried to say his dad was incapacitated?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So that was a lovely one, right?
That was. That was. And you were very helpful too because of, you know, the extra work and in identifying and making sure, hey, you know, this is who it is. And then I think what blew my mind is the people that this particular person tried to pull in on the scheme, because I don't think there's a better word to describe.
Yeah, it was a scheme.
Yeah. So, you know, he got, you know, hoodwinked, although I think she figured out because she was a very savvy attorney, you know, figured out. So he initially brought her in. And then the realtor also, you know, was having him sign a listing agreement and he didn't have the proper authority to do that. And then the contract, you know, and you ended up having to hire an attorney to battle that.
For stuff that we knew was wrong, but they just wanted to continue moving forward.
Right, right.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that saved me too. And as you were saying, know what you're doing before you start the body of the deal. Because if I didn't know, okay, this is how intestacy laws work.
Right.
You know, and I don't have to be a lawyer, right? I just need to know the framework.
Right.
If I didn't know that, then I might have backed out of the deal or, you know, something crazy. This was one where it was elder financial fraud. I think it was title fraud. It's like all kinds of things.
There are lots of things that were happening that fortunately we were able to avoid because of the due diligence that you had done. And then ultimately the lawyer you ended up hiring, you know, to really get that second purchaser who didn't have a legitimate contract because it had not been signed by the right person. They didn't have the proper authority, you know, to sell the house. Like those are all little things that can trip people up.
Right.
And so that's why it is good to understand. And you said the word intestacy, so I'll break it down for people who are non-lawyers, meaning so that intestacy is where they die and there's no will. If you have a will, then it's testate, right? No will, intestacy. And different states handle the death of folks who have no will differently. So you definitely want to understand how your state handles that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So one quick question. We work with real estate agents sometimes, and I know you've referred some people to me as well. There are a lot of real estate agents out there who think that, one, they don't fully understand wholesaling, but they think they're in competition with wholesalers. Right. What do you have to say about that when you think about the type of deals we work on versus what realtors who bring the transactions do you work on?
You kind of, but both of y'all are looking to buy properties and then sell. And realtors work with investors who also buy properties. So you could be looking at a property to stop it from the foreclosure sale and you're able to stop the sale and then turn around and sell it to a realtor who has an investor. You know, so there's plenty of, I see like there's plenty of work in this space. You know, we don't need to compete, although sometimes, you know, we kind of feel like, oh, you know, I mean, it's kind of natural human and you got to dial it back a little bit. But, you know, there's plenty of work. There's plenty of properties. You know, you can always make a deal. You know, everything's negotiable now. So I would say, you know, if there's an investor who wants to buy a property, that's a little bit hairy at the beginning. You're helpful because you would get that solved. And then you can hand them a nice, neat, you know, here you go. Everything's been resolved. You know, property, all you have to do is go in, you know, fix it up, do some repair, whatever, then either make it a rental or
you list it.
Right. Yeah. So, but that's what I would say on that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we like working with realtors. And I think that you made a point in there. There are some realtors who do not work with investors or don't know how to work with investors. And so they think everybody is a competitor.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand, leverage your standing as an agent. and use it to collaborate and increase your chances of success. And
Yeah.
those, just like we interview title companies, we interview realtors. We want to work with realtors,
Right.
and other people that can provide a whole solution for everybody involved. So in closing, what do you want to say to everybody who's listening? Because we're talking title attorney to client here. What do they need to walk away with? And I'll tell you guys why you should hire EKKO, but you should.
Well, if if you have property and the homeowner has died, someone like Hayya is very helpful to work with. You guys identify properties that are not on the market, properties that have potential to be good investment. So in that sense, you're a step ahead of perhaps realtors and other investors because of the type of research that you all do. So it's helpful to reach out. You definitely want to interview wholesalers. And now in Virginia, there's a little bit more strict requirements legally for wholesalers, so, which is, it protects everybody. The ultimate goal is to protect the consumer.
Yeah, and you need to understand the laws in whatever state you're working in.
And in no way, like, you're not operating. And that's one of the things I appreciate about you is you don't try to operate on the shady side, but you want to do everything out front. And then definitely, selling and buying real estate now has become so much more involved. It's good to have someone who is a professional and who understands how it works. And so that's, I think that would be a key point, because I do get a lot of calls of people say, well, I don't want to use a realtor. I just want to sell it myself. And it's so much more now than what it was in the past. Yeah, because, well, look, you're not a lawyer, right? You're going to need the right people in your corner. And I would say with EKKO and you're one person in this company, but it's really valuable to have someone that you can trust who is very knowledgeable and a problem solver. So, yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, let's do it again.
Indeed.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.